Hey, everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm so happy that intro thing worked. I've been working on that for a while now, trying to be able to get that to work with my new system that I'm doing since I can't do all of the episodes here with my mom and doing the normal studio stuff that we're doing. So, first off, everybody, thank you guys so much for watching. We really do appreciate it. I have got an action packed week of going live this week here on LinkedIn. So, today, a great show for you guys. First off, we're doing a double header. So first is going to be coming in is Jamie Beard, talking to us about geothermal energy, geothermal crossover, clean energy, as well as some prize money towards the end of the show. So be sure to stay tuned for that. And that's not even the end of the show. That's like the second quarter of the show. On the second half of the show, at noon, we will be bringing you guys James Metcalf and Clint Leazer of Intrepid Directional Drilling, who's going to be talking about their recent acquisition of Gyrodata's directional drilling division. Oh, the screen just blinked. Okay, threw me off for a second. Then tomorrow, I've got stuff that I'm doing with Pink Petro, talking about brand influencers. And I cringe every time that word's associated with me, but hey, we'll live with it. You guys can't hear me. All right, good stuff. And then Wednesday, we've got a in-class session with Neil Armstrong from Merlin ERD. So don't want to miss that one. That one's going to be growing. And then on Thursday, I'm going to be going live with SPE with a interview with George King. So we're going to be doing kind of a class session with him as well about shutting in wells and then turning wells back on. I probably said that wrong, but I haven't been practicing for stuff on Thursday yet. I've been practicing for stuff today. Without further ado, and I'm very excited to be able to have her on the show, Jamie Beard, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, David. Thanks for having me.
No worries. So as per normal, guys, please tell us where you guys are watching from in the comment section. Let us know. We love to be able to give everybody shout outs. We've got Mark West, John DeWart, Brandon Foster is watching. Brandon Foster was on the show on Friday last week, so glad to have him back. Usually he's just a lurker, as he mentioned during the interview last week. So nice that he's actually having fun in the comment section with us. So guys, like I said, let us know where you're watching from. If you guys have questions, comments at any point in time, please let us know. The whole point of doing these live and not just having them recorded or just playing them on, Spotify for a podcast is so that we can interact with you guys, the audience, and be able to answer the questions that you guys have. If you do ask a question and I don't get to it right away, feel free to ask it a second time, third time, fourth time until we see it, and we'll try to be able to get to everything we can. So with that, we will start off with Jamie. So Jamie, I know a lot of people in the oil and gas industry probably don't know who you are or what you do. So I'll give you this opportunity. Give us a little bit of your background and tell us a little bit about what you're doing in your day-to-day life now.
Sure. So I'm an energy and regulatory attorney, not a driller. I know just enough about drilling to get me into trouble. That's about where it ends. I was at a law firm for a while, and then I jumped over into the executive team of a startup company out of MIT that was working on power systems for directional drilling. We were working on a rechargeable energy storage device to replace lithium thionyl chloride batteries. So I started spending some time on rigs, getting really excited about directional drilling systems, and lived for a good part of a year on rigs, and got really familiar with directional drilling failures. And I think it's a really interesting set of technologies. About the same time, I got really excited about geothermal energy, and we can chat about why that is later on in the show. But really, what we started seeing is that we could go to really high temperatures with our energy storage devices, and we started thinking about the concept of mining for heat instead of oil and gas, and what could be accomplished if, for instance, all directional drilling technologies were sufficiently hardened to be able to drill for heat. And so that's how I got really excited about geothermal. I had the opportunity to take a job at the University of Texas at Austin. And I thought that it could be, what better place to be but Texas to try to build an innovation ecosystem around these concepts. So I started at UT Austin. I built a program that's DOE funded there called GEO, the Geothermal Entrepreneurship Organization. The purpose of GEO is to build an innovation ecosystem that leverages, the legacy drilling expertise and drilling and subsurface expertise of not only UT Austin, but also Texas. The whole state. That's what Texas does well. So, I spend my time day to day now trying to get folks in oil and gas excited about the future of green drilling, drilling for heat, and instead of oil eventually, right? And so that's what gets me really excited.
So I know one of the big things that we were going to be able to talk about today is kind of that crossover. But what do people need to know, at least from the oilfield service side of the business, on what takes place in geothermal geodrilling to be able to better understand that portion of the market?
Yeah. So there's a really big difference. The primary difference is all of oil and gas has been focused on doing one thing exceptionally well, and that's exploring, drilling for, and producing oil and gas, right? And the geothermal industry actually has a very different goal. Their goal is to actually seek out, drill for, and produce heat. And if you think about that, that's a big deal, because in oil and gas, largely you want to avoid heat, right? I mean, your heat's annoying. Heat causes failures. So you're looking to avoid the thing that the geothermal industry is aimed at getting at, right? And so there's a difference of perspective. And I think what has happened, the industries don't often overlap because they're focused on very different problem sets. But what's really interesting is the oil and gas industry has a gigantic number of shiny toys, a huge bucket of technologies that, if used, and if focused on the problem of mining heat, exploring for heat, and producing heat, could be a complete paradigm shift when it comes to geothermal development and where we can push geothermal projects and geothermal energy. So, while oil and gas has not necessarily been focused on the particular problem set of finding heat, right? I think the opportunity lies in directing the assets and the intellectual capital of the industry toward that problem set, because it truly could enable a new energy future.
So that was one of the things that I don't know if you got the chance to be able to see it, and for anybody in the audience got to be able to see it. We did have Jody from the National Renewables Energy Laboratory who came on, and it said it was kind of the chicken and the egg thing, is that for geothermal they need more technology in it, but the oilfield service companies need to be able to see that there's money in being able to go that direction. Now that we've got this kind of shift in energy climate, where oilfield service companies are looking to be able to go over there, what do you think would be the initial thing for oilfield service companies to be able to attack?
Yeah. So there are three stages of this that I see. There's a very short-term play, there's a mid-term play, and then there's a longer-term vision, right? The short-term play is really exciting, and it's actually a result of the downturn. As you all know, the industry is in trouble, and it's scary right now. Looking at the number of small and mid-sized oil service companies that are in trouble, and they have a lot of idle assets and crews. And so the very short-term view of geothermal development is trying to figure out a way to engage the idle assets that are in the oil and gas industry now, and aim them towards shovel-ready geothermal projects, projects that have been kind of on the books for in existing geothermal entities that are ready to go and that can be drilled in the short term. And I view this as really a job saving angle, right? It's got a really cool clean energy spin, but really the purpose of doing this in the very, very near term is to preserve jobs in the oil and gas industry, particularly in the oil service sector. The midterm view, though, I think is where I start getting really excited, where you get enough critical mass and operators and oil service companies to start engaging in the space where they start doing exploration, drilling, and production of the projects themselves, right? And I think that the opportunity is interesting because you see operators making these huge carbon neutrality commitments under really tight time frames. You've got carbon neutrality by 2050 from several major operators now, and in the past 10 years, they've looked a lot at traditional renewables like solar and wind to do these diversifications. But there's a really interesting thing here where those investments don't leverage the core competencies of their entities, right? Or nor do they leverage the core competencies of the industry. But geothermal does, right? Geothermal is all about drilling, producing, and exploring for an energy asset, just like oil and gas, but it's just heat instead of oil and gas. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things that if you can get enough traction in the industry for the industry to really grab onto it and say, hey, this is aligned with not only our goals for carbon neutrality, but it also leverages everything we do and know, all of our workforce, all of our employees, all of our intellectual property, all of our trade secrets, all of our methodologies, right? It's just a beautiful concept that I'm really hoping in the midterm starts to catch on. And then, of course, the longer term view, a decade out, would be that the oil and gas industry finds this an interesting enough and engaging enough concept to where it really would support a major pivot of the industry into geothermal. So you get in the business of drilling for heat instead of oil, and oil kind of becomes an ancillary part of the portfolios of oil and gas companies.
All right, so you made three good points. So I've got three kind of follow-up questions here. With the first one being, so on the first level, the being able to switch and just do kind of like saving jobs per se is the kind of the first level was. How much work is actually out there right now? And this kind of goes to John DeWart's question. He says, what is the market side? Jody had mentioned only 14 wells drilled in the last year.
Yeah.
So how?
Yeah.
I mean, so that's what's been drilled, but that doesn't mean that, like you said, that there's stuff that's on the books ready to go. In your observation, what do you see as far as what's out there ready to go as of right now, that if people just started making the phone calls that they could start, getting that ball pushed down the road?
Yeah. Well, so, I think we have to be direct about this too. It makes sense to really look at the facts here when you look at scale. The geothermal industry compared to the oil and gas industry is tiny. I mean, tiny. The largest geothermal producer in the world has a market cap of about $3 billion. One single operator has a market cap of $200 billion. We're talking.
So who is that? The largest geothermal company that's out there right now?
Ormat's the one that I refer to as being really out there with the shovel ready projects, right? And they're probably the ones in the US that would be the most engaged in the really near term. But when you look at the scale of the industry, right, and you compare them, it's going to be hard to take up all of the idle assets and work that's needed in the oil and gas industry. It's going to be hard to absorb that with the existing geothermal industry, right? Because the scales are just very, very different. That said, I mean, there could be 10 or 20 projects in the very near term that could launch, and that's 10 or 20 rig crews. That's something. But
I mean, that might be a 10% bump in rig count.
Yes, but given the number of idle assets, which are well into the hundreds, it's something, but it's not everything, right? So then the question becomes, well, how to really get oil companies and including operators excited about, engaging in the space themselves and actually and making some investments. And I think the question also goes for governments that are considering stimulus packages, how to help the industry. I think the focus really should be something like this, right? Where how can you incentivize industry players to start engaging in the space themselves so we can get the scale we need to really make a difference. So it's a good question, and it's one that it's one that really draws to the fore the differences in scale between the two industries for sure.
So with that, then, I see it as being something that, we've had within oil and gas, the big crew change where, during the 80s that so many people, left the industry. We kind of keep talking about it. Every time we have a downturn, we have people leave the industry that go to be.
And it's a permanent loss. Yeah.
It's a permanent loss to the industry. It's education loss, it's experience loss. So yeah, I think it's a great thing that, there's people that can at least stay within a parallel of our industry to be able to keep that knowledge base going, because not only does that help out oil and gas, but it also continues to be able to help out geothermal. It may not be one for one, but the further we can push oil and gas or the further we can push geothermal, they both kind of benefit from it. I mean, there's plenty of oil and gas stuff out there that's hot hole that if we had the tools for it, we'd probably go drill it as well. So maybe it's one of those things where they start to overlap. So then on the next thing you had said was, the part you were most excited about was kind of the methodologies and then companies getting involved and being more participating. Oh gosh, I got stuff falling all over behind me. Sorry about that. I just moved my chair back and it knocked my water bottle over. Sorry. So we've got more companies being participating in the geothermal space. What companies have you seen that have been able to make that migration over already? And what benefits are some of these companies seeing from that move?
You mean oil service companies that have already done it?
Yes.
Yeah, so the ones that I'm most aware of are the largest ones. So, of course, Schlumberger has been engaging in this space for a long time, for at least 10 years. Also, Baker Hughes. There's, a variety of mid-sized companies like Scientific Drilling that have really interesting geothermal projects. They've paired, some of these companies have partnerships with operators in the industry as well. There are operators that are engaged. Equinor is one, really exciting interest in really high temperature plays for geothermal. And some of the operators that haven't quite yet started talking about it publicly have also started to engage. And I would say honestly, just in the past 2 quarters, the levels of engagement in the space have become kind of breathless. So I think the entities, the largest entities, are starting to see this as a competitive strategic advantage, and they're engaging at a big strategic level. And it's how do we leverage this? How quickly should we do it? What partnerships should we build, etc. An example, Shell has made some investments in geothermal startups, for instance, some really cool concepts, 2 geothermal startups in closed loop, which we can chat about, Ever and Greenfire, and then also a hypersonic drilling concept called Hypersciences. And so you do see kind of forays into this area by the majors. Same thing with the oil service companies. Now and actually this could be a good time to check out a slide. The slide with the 3 ovals, it's a bunch of graph with a bunch of rigs, and there's 3 ovals. There's a red, yellow, and green oval. Keep going.
There we go. That one?
There we go. Yes. So thank you, Total, for this data. The ovals are mine. So if you look, these are high temperature, high pressure plays in the industry. They're wells that have been drilled in really extreme drilling environments. If you look, the top of the temperature range there is 300 C. And as you go on the bottom, you're looking at pressure. So, there's a bunch of activity. If you look at that green oval, there's been a bunch of activity in the industry in that temperature and pressure range, which is, the 200 to 250 C mark. And that's really, really exciting for geothermal, economically speaking. Like in terms of temperatures, really, if you want to be relevant for and economically feasible for geothermal, the hotter you go, the better, right? And so, when you get above 150 C, things start looking really interesting. And above 250 C, it's awesome, right? So if you look at the green and the yellow ovals there, there's been a good bit of industry engagement in the areas where geothermal development could be spot on, right? So that says to me that there is a lot of translatable industry knowledge and technologies that could immediately go to develop these geothermal wells, right? And these are high temperature and pressure oil and gas technologies. Now, I think that, and there may be people like onshore drillers, for instance, that are looking at this and saying, well, hell, I have never drilled a 250 degree C well. And that's probably true for most onshore, the typical directional drilling operations. And so I think that there needs to be, some effort in the industry to do some technology transfer from the high temperature and pressure regimes and offshore to onshore, to the typical directional drilling project, right? Because that's how you enable, drilling for really high in really high temperature and pressure conditions, is by passing on some of this knowledge. So anyway, and if you look at the red oval up there, that's the hopeful future, right? But if you look, you can see a couple of wells that are getting pretty darn close to the temperature and pressures needed to enable these really big geothermal concepts. The red oval would be what they call, supercritical, really deep closed loop systems, where you're drilling, 30,000 feet and 350 C, 20,000 PSI, just really challenging conditions. But if you look at the wells that are kind of spotted around that red oval, these are potentially incremental improvements to existing knowledge, methodologies and technologies in the industry. And I think that is extraordinarily exciting, because that means this is not a moonshot to actually enable really deep, really hot concepts globally in a short term. You could do this. This could be done in less than a decade. So anyway, this is an illustration of industry capability in this space, right? The oil and gas industry knows this stuff. It's been encountered by accident, not because they were looking for it, right? They were looking for oil and gas, but they encountered 250 degrees Celsius and, 15,000 PSI. But what that means is they learned how to drill in those conditions, right? So then now we know, so we can drill for geothermal energy using the same methodologies and techniques, right?
So one of the questions I have to this is then, is there, something out there that might show the economics of the different stages? Because obviously you're saying that the hotter it gets, the better it gets as far as, working out the math. Is there really a relationship there? Because, looking at some of the stuff in kind of the green area, maybe that's not the most profitable, but if that gets the ball rolling and we can transfer a whole bunch of technology over to it,
exactly.
So what are some of the numbers there as far as like how that works out as far as economics?
They don't really exist in the oil and gas industry, because the oil and gas industry and the geothermal industry are selling two completely different types of assets. It's like different languages, right? So, and I've had this conversation over and over again with folks that are considering this and operators, and they're trying to figure out how they're going to make money on this long term, right? But all economic modeling in oil and gas is based on barrels of oil, and in geothermal you're actually producing energy. It's it's energy production. Your asset is actually heat that's turned into electricity. So it's a paradigm shift, right? That has to happen in terms of valuing projects. And I'll say too that, geothermal wells, they have really, they're expected to have really long lives. So they're an operating asset that could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decades, and produce energy, and you make money off that asset in that 3 or 4 or 5 decade period. Whereas for oil and gas, it's totally different, right? It's a different time scale for valuation. So if there are oil and gas people that are engaged in economic modeling, this is a question that really needs to be addressed within the industry, right? It needs to be worked on, and it's not something that, for instance, the geothermal industry can easily answer, because the geothermal industry, they're already working with their working language, which is producing power, right? And having these geothermal production plants and producing electricity. But this is an area where there's not an easily transferable or translatable language between the two industries. And it's something that I think is a really interesting question that needs to, it needs some exploration for sure.
So maybe then I could ask this way. As far as the way that this works, and I've done a little bit of research here, and so I'll try to make sure that this is easy for everybody to be able to understand. So just producing the steam or heat, right, is one methodology, and then there's the closed loop system. And within closed loop, then that means, like, essentially that as long as the earth is hot in that area, that the production for that well, I guess we could call it, would be, essentially infinite. So then
probably not infinite, but it's not the reason it wouldn't be infinite is not because the earth cools down or anything like that. The reason it wouldn't be infinite is likely because operation of these systems over time is likely to degrade the well itself, right? So, and this is something that needs to be modeled and well understood. The reason I say, the assets could be between 1 and 5 decades is because it's not really well understood how these engineered subsurface systems will change over time and pressure and operation. You see what I'm saying, et cetera.
Yes.
And for instance, closed loop systems that are aiming for supercritical environments where there's a lot of plasticity in the rock, and there are systems that could change over time, and there's not a clear answer as to how long that will be, right? But there is an assumption that there will be a useful life, a life cycle for these wells, and that eventually they will degrade and become less efficient and need to be re-drilled. So,
I'm all for drilling more.
Say that again.
I said I'm all for drilling more.
Well, and that's kind of a question that I've gotten a few times from folks, which is, well, okay, so we go out there for a couple of decades, we drill, say, 1,000 wells a year. And then all of a sudden, that's all the energy anybody needs, and we're done. Now what? What happens to the industry? And it's like, well, by the time you're done with your 2 decades of drilling, the ones that you drilled in that first year, they're going to need to be done again. So this is not something that will likely end. There will be a life cycle that will continue to increase demand for drilling. And I'll also say that, and this is something that the oil and gas industry is likely to engage in more in the coming years, is drilling carbon sequestration wells. So, in closed loop systems, this is a good time for a slide too. So if you'll go to the slide, we can talk about closed loop versus EGS. I think it's worth talking about that because it goes to the short, near, and longer term concept. If you go to the power plant that has a fracture, so that's the closed loop. Go to the one right before that.
Oh,
there you go. So, the two geothermal concepts that I think are going to be most exciting to the oil and gas industry. One is called engineered or enhanced geothermal systems, and this is an illustration of what a system like that would look like, where you drill, you frack, you drill a production well, you circulate a fluid, and you produce really hot water or steam, and you produce, then you produce electricity on the surface with that. Now, this EGS is being pursued by some companies. There's a startup called Fervo that's working on this. It's a concept that's yet to be completely proven out, but it's looking really promising. The Department of Energy has made some significant investments in this area, to the tune of a couple $100 million. To make sure that these technologies work, and they work efficiently. This is the first step toward enabling drilling for geothermal energy anywhere in the world. Right now, and the reason historically that oil and gas companies have not engaged in geothermal is because they viewed it as niche. And there's an article, I run a blog called The Heat Beat. There's an article from the former CTO of Halliburton that talks about how he viewed geothermal when he was in the industry and how he views it now and how his view has changed. And what changed his view is the advent of technologies like EGS and closed loop systems that allow geothermal energy to be scalable, right? So you can just drill for it anywhere. And that's exciting for the oil and gas industry, right? Because all of a sudden then it becomes relevant. So EGS is one where, you drill, you frack, you produce energy. Now go to the next slide, the closed loop system.
There we go.
Closed loop system is, closed loop systems are, and this illustration is actually from my program Geo at UT Austin. We have a faculty member, Dr. Eric Van Oort, an industry veteran from Shell, who's working on some really cool bleeding edge work in modeling closed loop systems, and really deep, really hot closed loop systems. This is a concept that is more futuristic, but not that far off. You're talking, there are companies now, Greenfire and Ever, that are out there drilling closed loop now. They're just not drilling them at the extremes that this concept shows. But what our view is at Geo is if you can learn to drill, to 30,000 feet, 350 C.
I think Jamie's back.
Am I
Jamie,
back?
yes,
Hi.
you're back. All right, there we go. We'll pick right back up.
When did you lose me? There we go. All right.
We were
so
still kind of on this one here.
Okay. All right. So what we're hoping for is for the deep closed loop system concept, if you're able to enable economical drilling practices, 30,000 feet, 350 C, and really high pressures like 20,000 psi, you can essentially drill for geothermal energy anywhere in the world. And that's, eye on the ball there, because that's where you get the scale that the oil and gas industry is really interested in when it comes to thinking about projects and concepts. So that's the difference between the two concepts in geothermal everywhere, right? It's EGS and then it's closed loop. Those are the two angles that are really interesting for the industry.
So you said Ever and Greenfire are the two that are doing the closed loop right now. Can you say which one do you think has got the better idea or the methodology, which one's going to work, or are both of them potentially going to both kind of take off, and then those will be the two big concepts, or is there even possibility of room for a third to be able to come in there?
Well, when it comes to startups, the more the merrier. Let a thousand flowers bloom. I think that Ever and Greenfire are both awesome, and I hope that they both succeed. They're doing slightly different things, which I think is great. There's room for a lot of innovation here. So, my guess is within the next 10 years, there's going to be dozens of companies that are pursuing these concepts. And many of them will probably be folks from the oil and gas industry that peel off and start companies. That's at least the way it's looking. looking now. So and Tim Furvo is a good example of that, where he's an industry person that decided to peel off and really focus on these future, green drilling concepts.
So with that, and we're just about at the time part that you told me. So we've got about 20 minutes left. Tell me a little bit about this prize money stuff, because that's what I've been teasing everybody with. And so
it's exciting.
So let me bring you back up here. There we go.
Okay.
All right. So this is what everybody in oilfield services needs to be watching and listening to. Listen intently. So there you go.
So my program Geo at UT Austin has been recruited to be a recruiter for a $4.65 million geothermal prize competition that's being sponsored by the Department of Energy. And applications are open now. The first deadline is August 24. So you've got some months to think about this. The essentials of the competition are this. There's 4 phases. You enter the first phase. It's you put forth an idea. It's pretty easy. You produce a 90-second video talking about your idea. You get a 1-page summary slide. You've got a 1-page narrative. It's a pretty low bar when it comes to submitting your idea. If you get chosen to be in the first round, here, drop a slide on this, David. The one that shows it's at the very end of the presentation, and it shows the 4 phases of the comp. There you go, right there.
This one?
The one before that one.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yep. So at the end of August, you submit your ideas, and if you're chosen, you get into that ready phase of the competition. And they're aiming for 20 teams to be competing in that ready phase. Now, there are significant prize pools in this competition, and the competition is built to be, to have a low barrier for entry. They want teams to think about improvements that you can make to drilling tools that will harden them for temperature, vibration, shock, and pressure. So the types of environments that you encounter in geothermal wells. Also hardened to corrosive environments. For instance, my guess is that in the directional drilling space in oil and gas, you guys are going to be perfectly suited to solve the problem sets in terms of shock, vibe, pressure, and temperature, right? Because you know how tools fail. And this competition is focused on solving the myriad of small problems, the annoyances that happen when you have a tool failure, right? And the point is to enable oil and gas technologies. We want to enable directional drilling, for instance, in the geothermal context, right? So I'll give you an example of something that could be an idea that would be really easily submitted for this competition, but it's one that someone has already done, so that's why I'm using it. So you can't use this one. Say you've got a motor, and you hit really bad shock and vibe conditions, or it gets a little too hot and your elastomer, your seal fails, and you have fluid intrusion, right? Now, that is the perfect problem for this competition, because what you do is you redesign that part of your motor. You use 3D printing to iterate a design to where you eliminate the seal. And then you test to see if you still have the same problem with your new integrated solution, right? So it's a small slice of a problem. Just pick one, a failure that happens because of conditions that are encountered in geothermal wells, temperature, shock, vibe, pressure. And so, that's the point of this competition is as you progress through these phases, you're iterating on your designs and you're testing your prototype to see if it's up to the task of temperature and geothermal well conditions. The really exciting thing about this is you get money, you get voucher money for your prototyping. And you also get cash money Yeah, I mean, you don't have to spend money on this competition. You are funded to do so, and the prizes are amazing. I mean, if you get into that first phase, the ready phase, the cash prize for teams for that is between there you go, thank you, $25,000 and $50,000 per team. That's cash. The second phase, if you make it through, $100,000 to $200,000 in cash. And you keep going to where if you're one of the 2 grand prize winners, you win $500,000. Awesome competition. Really, really interesting way to get your feet wet on it, and get engaged in geothermal, leveraging oil and gas knowledge. And that's what I would encourage you to do. Don't try to know everything about geothermal. That the strong suits are here, that you guys are drillers and you know this stuff, right? And you know your tools and you know how they fail. So just pick a problem and solve it. Now, admittedly, there are some problems in the directional drilling string that you can't solve with this competition. One that comes to mind is lithium thionyl chloride batteries, right? There are some technologies that have temperature limitations that if you push them, it's catastrophic. And that's, and so eyes on the ball here. There are some things like that are going to need, bigger efforts and an R&D budget. But the focus with this competition is to get all the low-hanging fruit, right? To harden the drill string as much as we can, so we can focus on the remaining problems, right? That tend to be bigger, like what to do about high temperature electronics, for instance, or batteries or whatever, right? So anyway, I would encourage everyone listening to participate in this. It is an amazing way to get engaged with geothermal while also potentially winning a life-altering amount of money.
So we've had a couple of questions come in here. The first one was, how does additive manufacturing tie into the project?
Yeah.
Thanks, Michael Hicks, for your question.
Additive manufacturing is a fancy word for 3D printing. And the reason they want to use 3D printing for this competition is to enable teams to iterate on designs cheaply and quickly, right? And 3D printing is the best way to do that. They also wanted to make sure that the competition was widely open to anyone who had a solution, right? And not just open to entities that can easily prototype, right? For instance, that have, a lot of expensive capabilities for building prototypes. So that's where 3D printing comes in. And I think it's a really interesting concept here, because it means that, literally individuals could compete without having access to $1 million fabrication facilities. 3D printing is also a really good way to do things really quickly. And that's part of this competition as well, is to do really fast turn iterations on designs to see, how you can maximize performance capabilities.
So another question is, who is part of like the committee that judges these responses? Because obviously, if you know who your judge, if you've got the French judge and you're doing your ice skating routine or something, you're going to get a bad score or something. So if you know who it is, maybe you could kind of work towards areas that they see greater problems in. So who are the judge groups, and then what would you say are like the top 3 problems to be able to go after?
So judges, I don't think that the panel it has been chosen. I do know that the panel will be people that have nothing to do with any of the teams, and they're
That's
going.
Good.
They're going to be peer reviewers essentially, and they're going to be derived from either the geothermal industry, the national labs, the Department of Energy, or industry, right? So I imagine the panel is going to be very diverse, and they're going to be by necessity completely removed from any project participant, and appropriately firewalled. The question about what are the top 3, that's where I'm a lawyer and not a driller. And so you guys, know that, right? I mean, I've seen tool failures, and there's a lot of these. I can just say there's a lot of these, right? Any place that you
I'll say this: everybody keeps saying in the comment section that you said the F word, because we don't say failures in the industry. We say service
what,
interrupts.
sure, right, okay, that right, exactly. So anytime you've seen an interruption of service, that is a potential for you to solve a problem, right? And to iterate a design to see if you can avoid whatever happened. And again, I think there's 1,000 of these, and the question is, come up with the one that addresses as many of the check boxes as I've said, right? So come up with a solution that addresses temperature, pressure, shock, and vibe, and that's probably a really good idea, right? If you can get all four.
So now back to I'll pull this back up just for everybody can be able to see. So you've got the different levels here. So, first one is just submitting an idea. Just for submitting an idea, you could win what was it, like $25,000 to $50,000 in cash.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you're chosen, you submit your idea, and they choose the top 20 teams out of that idea pool. And if you're chosen, they're up to 20. So they don't have to choose 20. And that's why there's a variation in prize money there, because it's equally distributed. But the prize money for just being selected in the first round is between $25,000 and $50,000 cash, and it just goes up from there.
And so then from there, then you're develop, design, and build the team, create a prototype. My question is at level 4 here, when we get down to actually field testing, because I think that says that on the next one. So
that's right.
$200,000 for field testing per eligible winner. Because I guess that means that there's the potential that they just pick one, or maybe it's more, right, whatever. With the field testing, what do we know about the field testing? Is there a test well that they're going to do this at, or is there a certain drilling operation that they believe that will be taking place in that time span that they'll put this out on the well?
Yeah, so if you advance that far in this competition, chances are, and I think this is the intent, is to pair you up strategically with partners that are going to help you do this, right? And yes, there is a DOE sponsored site called Forge that could be leveraged in this competition. But it could also be that you get paired up with someone in the geothermal industry that's drilling a well, or even someone in the oil and gas industry that's drilling a well, and prototypes are field tested. I think this is, they don't have these things strictly drawn out though, because I think they like to, they want to leave it fluid to see how teams develop relationships as the competition progresses. And this is the first prize competition for geothermal that has been launched by DOE, but there have been prior ones, one for solar, for instance, and I think that's the way that demonstration has happened in that context as well. As you develop relationships as you go through the competition, and it becomes more clear how you're going to field test when you get there, essentially.
So I know that we just got this question in here. So Robert Lance Cook, who actually made a post the other day, which I really liked, he's asking, what is the smallest casing and hole diameter allowed at TD for geothermal? So I know you say you're not the driller. So
what are you doing? What are you doing to me, Lance? No, okay. So he is highlighting a problem that exists, and this is again one of those things that's going to have to be innovated in the industry. The oil and gas industry has well diameters that are insufficient at the top and bottom of wells for geothermal development. Geothermal development is better off the wider diameter you can be, and it needs to be the same diameter top and bottom, really, to produce. And so when you're thinking about, you want to produce as many gallons per minute of really hot water or steam as you can, that means you want to increase the diameter of your well, right? So that is something that's interesting. it's something that could get people thinking, and he may have actually asked this question as an idea, a way to help people with ideas, because there needs to be some innovation there. How do you drill wells that are the same diameter top and bottom, particularly if you get really deep? For the really deep geothermal concepts, that's going to be really hard, particularly the 30,000 feet, foot ones. So but that's as far as I go, Lance. Sorry. Good try, buddy.
So I'll say this: if Jody Robbins is watching, Jody, if you're watching, please put us a comment in the comment box, and what we'll tell everybody is, and I hate to do this to you, but if people are looking to be able to speak with somebody who is a former oil and gas drilling engineer and has now moved over to a geothermal drilling engineer and has some of the more technical questions to be able to ask, I think Jody is an absolutely amazing resource, because he has been on both sides of it, and now he's in, kind of the context of doing innovative, research with the government and stuff, and kind of really forward looking, but obviously understands a lot of the basic concepts on the two industries in areas. So I haven't seen a comment from him yet, but what we'll do is I'll tag him here in the comments here in a little bit. So if you guys do have some other technical questions as far as how to be able to develop and stuff, he's a great resource for it.
Yeah, and I would say there's also an email address that it's geothermalprize@nrel.gov that folks can email with questions like that, and they will find answers for you. But I do want to say, leverage what you know. Leverage what you know. You know stuff already that are your knowledge sets are sufficient to answer these problems. Knowing that we're aiming for really difficult conditions, right? So I would say for oil and gas, just generally, that geothermal specific well knowledge is important, and I think you should read up about it. I gave you some links, David, to some geothermal libraries, some resources that if you guys are interested in reading about geothermal wells and what's been done, I think that's really, really important, and that you should do that. But this competition is about drilling and tool failure, right? And so you don't have to be a geothermal.
And we know plenty about that.
Exactly, right? You do. You are perfectly suited for this. You are perfectly suited. You don't have to become a geothermal expert to compete in the competition. All you have to know is how tools fail and how to fix that.
So if there are any MWD hands or directional drillers or anybody in the directional drilling space that's ever had a failure, please comment yes in the comment section, or hit the little like button. And if you don't do it, you're lying. We've all been on jobs with multiple failures, and if you haven't, I don't even want to talk to you. It's not even fair. If somebody's got a perfect record in oil and gas,
let's go. Yeah,
that needs to be on their resume. They need to, everybody should know that person's name without a doubt. All right, so I have tagged Jody in the comment section here for you guys. I've also put the links down there. We're getting pretty close to time. We're just about. I could say this. James and Clint are both in the quote unquote waiting room or the green room or whatnot. I can see them back there, so they'll be on here with us in just a second. Jamie, any last words? Anything else that you would like to be able to share with everybody out there?
Yeah, I would say you guys are the future of energy. Drilling is the future of energy. It's just more than likely going to be green drilling. So chin up. I know things really suck in the industry right now, but let's turn this ship. And there's an active role that every single one of you can play in doing that. And you have the knowledge and skill set necessary to build this future. So chin up and let's do it, and see you on the other side when we're drilling for clean energy, right?
All right. Well, Jamie, thank you so much for joining us today. Every time I do any of the geothermal deep dive stuff, I'm continually learning stuff. And I love the fact that, many of our viewers who may be in a position where they've lost a job, or they're transitioning, or they may be even worried about their future with the position that they have, that there is another industry that runs parallel to where we are. It may be smaller, but it's still another opportunity, so that you don't have to, completely start over. I even know that I was talking to the students in the AADE group at UT Austin one day, and I said, look, if somebody snaps their fingers and all oil disappears from the earth, we'll all just go to geothermal drilling the next day. All right. We may not have the best tools and everything for it, but that's what this competition is for us to be able to address that. Like, I cannot wait to see when the first group gets selected, because hopefully I'll know some of the people.
Represent. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I'm definitely going to be promoting it. I'm going to be putting stuff out there. I'm going to be telling everybody to come talk to you, Jamie. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I really do appreciate it. And, we'll maybe once we get through the first round or the second round or something, we'll have you come back on. Maybe you and Jody can come on at the same time and talk about some of the technologies that are coming through the pipeline for you guys.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, David.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. All right, guys. Bye. All right, guys, stay tuned here. We're just about to start the second half of the show. I'm timing this just right, I think. It's working out great. So we've got James Metcalf and Clint Leazer from Intrepid Directional Drilling. They're going to come on and be able to talk about the purchase of the acquisition they just made of the Gyrodata Directional Drilling division, and squash any rumors out there that might be going around about why and whatnot. They're going to talk to us about it. This is really exciting stuff for our industry right now, because I, for one, did not see this coming. Obviously, there's people internally there that knew about this for some time. So we're going to have a great talk with them here in just a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play a quick little commercial. I'm going to just touch my toes, stretch for just a second, bring them on, and then we'll get the second half started. All right, guys, I am back with you. Actually didn't do anything, just watched the video because I really enjoy that video. If you guys haven't seen it yet, please tune in on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. It might be a little bit different this week because we have so much stuff going on. We'll be playing another How It's Done video. This week we will be featuring Rime MWD and their pulsers and stuff will be coming on to be able to show their stuff and get a little behind the scenes look. Last week was Arcotech. So if you've ever been interested in looking at how power sections are made, stators specifically, go check out that video. We've also had Enable Tech, DTI. I'm forgetting one of them, but go check out those videos. It's been an amazing set of videos. We've got more coming, 10 episodes. And if you guys are interested, if you or your company is interested in being in that series, give us a shout out. We're ready to start as soon as everything is allowed. We'll start filming season 2 and continuing that series. We've gotten great response from it, so we're really excited about that. One other quick announcement. Tomorrow, let's see if it'll show up. Tomorrow, I will be doing Meet the Energy Influencers, a zigzag Zoom with Pink Petro. So we'll have Katie's going to be hosting a thing for the 9 of us. Katie, Josh Lowry, Maciel Diaz, Jamie Elrod, Catherine Mills, who's with Crude Audacity, myself, Mark LaCour, Warren, and David Reed, Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Technology Officer at NOV. We'll have a quick little discussion tomorrow about energy influencers and marketing. Cringe for me. I don't know if I really belong on that list, but hey, we'll have it. So without further ado, we've got a whole bunch of people watching and tuned in for this portion of the show. Well, welcome to the show, James Metcalf and Clint Leazer. Thanks you guys so much for being here. Thank you for waiting and being patient with me. This has been an amazing couple of days here for me. I know that I have had multiple people contact me about what went on with you guys. I'll let you guys tell the story. So why, when, however you guys want to pitch this.
Hey, first of all, good afternoon. And when you say James, it takes me aback because we've got to introduce James as Hollywood.
Okay,
virtual.
I'm sorry. We've got
Yeah,
Hollywood joining
everybody
us.
knows that he's Hollywood. That's a story we can get to perhaps later. But
Yeah,
happy
so
to be here. Thanks for having us, David.
Hey, no worries, guys. All right, so here's the question. We know that the industry is going through some crazy times right now, and obviously we've got to be innovative. We've got to think on our feet. The announcement just came out last week that you guys had purchased the directional drilling division of Gyrodata. Tell me, what does that like deal entail? What does that mean that you guys are bringing on that portion?
Yeah, first of all, bear in mind that I met Robert Trainer back towards the end of last year, CEO of Gyrodata, and we shared a lot of life views and ideas about this industry in general. And it was clear, and it's been clear to us for a long time, that in order to be successful in this directional drilling business, you need to have some scale, some critical mass, of which we were both lacking. We're essentially the same size company when the smoke clears. So we started talking about the idea when things were still good, growing, of how we could merge these two companies together, Intrepid take the lead, and grow our business together. Obviously, over the last few months, the deal has morphed a little bit, and there became a couple of go points. And Hollywood and I talked about this, and to me, it was always go. This is a very positive thing for Intrepid. This is a very good thing for the Gyrodata side of the business as well. And we're looking forward to it. You have to realize that we've got complementary customer base. We've got complementary asset bases. We have focused on the Permian Basin since about 2015, 2016. Although in the past we've had offices up in the Northeast, we've been in the Mid-Con, we've been up in the Rocky Mountains, and we've been down in the Eagle Ford. And of course, everybody was in the Barnett. This acquisition gives us activity up in the Northeast right now, up in the Rocky Mountains, complementary business out in West Texas and Latin American operations. So we've more than doubled in size, and not only personnel, equipment base, which is also very complementary, but also customer base. So we're excited and enthused, and we're taking this time as an opportunity. We think that there are going to be more consolidation moves in our segment of the industry. In fact, we're looking at more consolidation ourselves over the coming 6, 12, 18 months.
Wow. So you guys are still, obviously the ink is still wet on this deal here. So you guys are still looking to potentially be able to expand your look even further to continue consolidating? Absolutely. What's kind of driving that? Why do y'all want to keep expanding there?
Well, number one, the focus from the beginning has been to be a preeminent directional drilling provider in the U.S. land market and ultimately become international. We're very excited about the Latin American operations that we've inherited. We see a lot of growth potential down there. We've got business, we've got work coming up in Ecuador and Colombia. We're going to be looking at Argentina. There are projects in the Middle East that we're looking at. We're going to work very closely with Gyrodata in their international business to partner up around the world.
Wow, I know that I've talked to several people, recently, and said that, the companies that can expand internationally are going to have a better opportunity as far as livelihood going forward. So how much did that weigh in on y'all's decision making to be able to go forward with this deal?
Well, quite frankly, it was just a bonus. The fact that they had the Latin American operations. Again, we've more than doubled our rig count in the last 4 or 5 days. Now, look, we're optimistic. I'm an eternal optimist. I know we're in one surreal, bizarro world these days. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up, roll over, and say, Deja, you're not going to believe what I just dreamed. But we're living through it. We're looking for the future. The oil and gas industry is not going away. Directional horizontal drilling is not going away. So we want to continue to position Intrepid as a leader in the industry, and we're going to take this opportunity to grow, quite frankly.
So what do you think are other things that not just Intrepid, but directional drilling companies need to be able to do to continue to survive and maintain livelihood in the industry, and with definitely a very bleak outlook here in the near term? but obviously just to be able to survive long term, what do you think the directional drilling companies really need to focus on and continue doing?
Yeah, let me pass it off to Hollywood and let him talk a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer that question. I mean, I think one of the things that sets Gyrodata and Intrepid apart, kind of as individual companies and now one company on the directional front, is our asset base and our ability to utilize our own assets and our own operations. I think there's a massive rental market for third-party rentals that a lot of directional companies utilize. A lot of them are very successful. Some of them come with their own problems, and I think being able to manage all of your repair and maintenance, all of your assets, all of your planning and efficiencies around your own asset base gives you a massive advantage for not only quality control, but your customers are comfortable that you know the equipment that's downhole. It's just a good thing for us. We really enjoy having such a large inventory. And back to Clint's part about the complementary assets, I think Gyrodata and Intrepid are no different than a lot of other companies. I mean, we can excel in a lot of different areas. And I think Intrepid and Gyrodata do in many ways, but everyone has their shortcomings in their own unique ways. And where Intrepid has struggled in certain aspects, we see a lot of solutions on the Gyrodata side. And where we know and have been exposed to where Gyrodata might need some help, we also have really good solutions for them. And so when you put those two together and you can address both sides of the issue with assets that you own, instead of having to outsource them and worried about someone else's quality control, it gives you a massive advantage in the industry. And I think a lot of customers are looking for people that have their own equipment that are accountable for the quality of the equipment that go down hole, because we don't pass the buck off. We have to address it internally ourselves. And we all, have to answer to each other for why things didn't go right.
And so look, we got extremely fortunate with Gyrodata. We've got a culture that looks like it's similar. I know that in the directional drilling business, there's a myriad of cultures inside of each different directional drilling company, but it looks to me like we've got some cultures that are going to be easy to mesh. And we spent a lot of time on the phone Thursday, the day that we closed, with their key operations and sales management teams and customers. And I was thoroughly impressed with their attitude, with their commitment, with the relationships they had with their customers. It looked as though they're very, very strong, and we're excited about that. We brought, and just to mention, we brought the entire Gyrodata team on board, soup to nuts, everybody that they have from of course we didn't get Robert, but everybody else.
Robert had to stay over Slacker.
Yeah.
So when you're saying, like, as far as being able to scale for these directional companies, what do you think are the key essential parts as far as being able to scale? Is it just having more equipment, more assets, or being able to cover more rigs? That's going to be able to change the future landscape as far as directional drilling is concerned?
I think that's one of the answers. I think we could say yes, yes, and yes to that. Again, I'll pass it off to Hollywood so I don't do all of the talking.
But either one of you guys can answer. Y'all just
I think David.
It's hard to get a word in edgewise with me. Yeah. So
what's most important, I think, to our customers, which is where your success comes from, is as you scale and you grow and you build, regardless of how you do it, you're selling a certain value proposition, a certain quality to what you're telling someone you're going to come out and do. Right. And being able to add on operations and add on basins and add on customers, rigs, wells, management teams, all those things, you still have a minimum standard of pretty high expectations. Right. The barrier to entry into directional may not be that hard because of all the rental equipment that's out there, but the expectations are very lofty. Right. And so in order to be successful, you have to continue to grow without sacrificing the performance. And everyone has a different recipe for that. Part of our recipe is owning and maintaining and being responsible for nearly 100% of our equipment that goes downhole. That's one of the solutions we've found to that problem, because when you bolt on and you just pick up some last minute work and you don't have the resources to put your own equipment out there, sometimes that you have problems that arise that you really have no control over, and you might be crossing your fingers a little bit that they don't happen, and it goes off without a hitch until you can understand the operations a little better and get your own equipment out there. So that's just one of the solutions that we've found to that problem. But to me, it's the success, it's the performance, it's the management of the job at the rig level, right? And making sure that the expectations of the individual engineer and superintendent, drilling manager, all the way up to some of these smaller companies where upper management is involved in the drilling operations. I mean, you have to make sure all those people are satisfied and that your operations are far more than just sufficient.
So I want to be able to say real quick.
Hollywood mentioned
go
expectations and realize I've been in this business since I graduated in 1984. Literally the day after I graduated, I was working for Sperry Sun Offshore. I've never seen the expectations so high from our customers these days. The expectations are high. The parameters are high. The push on our equipment and the drain on our equipment is high. I mean, it's just a difficult operating environment out there for directional drilling companies right now. More difficult than I've ever seen.
Why do you think that pressure is? Why do you think it's so difficult right now?
Well, I think that initially, if you look at this, it's a drive to reduce costs from the operator side, and we are totally understandable of that. We're doing the same thing. We have to come to the rig every day and bring value to the operation, and I think that's one thing that we do excel at. We've got to reduce cost per foot. When the smoke clears, that's what it's about.
Do you think that the industry should start to look at the business model instead of a cost per day to be able to go to a cost per foot model? Do you think that that would be a model that would help not only Intrepid, but all of the other directional drilling companies out there to be able to go forward and be prosperous?
Yeah, look, I love the idea. We actually I founded Intrepid in 2001 with the notion that we were going to work on cost per foot. And we did an awful lot of work for several years on cost per foot. The problem being that engineers are fairly smart themselves, and they come up with a day rate that they want to see, and they can divide and add as well. So you just make that cost per foot essentially come out to a day rate when the smoke clears. So we've got to work on performance-based pricing, I think is a more accurate way to put that. Rather than just necessarily cost per foot, it's got to be performance-based. Well, and typically today it's difficult. Our performance-based pricing that we have with in the industry is typically more punitive rather than win-win.
So I know that we've got a lot of people out there watching. We were already up to about 52 people watching. It's been steadily climbing here since the top of the hour. Hey, if any of you guys are out there that are watching this, if you think somebody else would get value from it, please tag them in the comment section. And or if you have a question and don't hesitate to ask. I know we got a lot of you guys out there watching. Don't be shy. Now's not the time. So, we all have a lot of these discussions behind closed doors. So feel free to throw something out there. I'm just waiting for somebody to be able to throw me a curveball or something there. So back to the deal and being able to get this at the very origin of this, what really prompted you guys to be able to not so much directly looking at gyro data, but to be able to say, what, let's start, doing some consolidation work. Because, if you just got to put things on paper, it kind of gets confusing almost, or even just in the thought process of combining different directional companies, different assets, different MWD tools, different motors, different locations, personnel and stuff. It's not always one of those things that you would think about, could mesh together well. What really started you guys down this thought process of looking at being able to acquire another company?
I apologize. I don't know if it's my internet or where, but I didn't hear any of that.
Oh, okay. James, if you did, go ahead and answer.
Yeah, so Clint, I'll summarize the question and then start to answer it and interject when you want to. But David was just asking about, why did we go down the path? What is the reason why we started looking at these consolidation efforts, and what is the driver for us? And I'll throw a couple of things out there, and I'm sure Clint's pretty passionate about this subject, so I'm sure he'll interject at some point. But when you look at our industry, the 80, 90, 100 plus players that are in the directional world that operate, with a myriad of different kinds of equipment, wherever they source them, there's a lot of different recipes out there for why these individual companies, are successful and exist and have their customers. But for the rig count that exists today, it's too fragmented of the market, and it's by far it's bifurcated as well, right? There's several big chunks of tiers of high quality, medium quality. There's a lot of different basins that kind of operate on different scales of quality of equipment. And I think that part of the solution is in order to get scale with the amount of competition out there, you have to look at these kind of opportunities. I think over the years, there's been a lot of people that are highly successful in directional, and we've all ended up to be kind of the same size. Some are a little bigger than others, but there seems to be sometimes a limit to the natural growth. And sometimes you have to take the offensive, you have to get aggressive, you have to find these opportunities, take them, and then make sure that the customers remain served and make sure that the performance is there. And then you get to earn those customers. You get to earn them trusting the new organization, which would be Intrepid in this case.
Thanks, James. We do have a question from Michael at Tomex. He said, Clint and James, I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. Does your purchase include the RSS systems? Now, I know you guys can't get into some of the technical details of the agreement and stuff, but as far as on the technology side, what can you guys say that happened there?
Is that Michael Sorrentino?
Yes, sir.
I think that is Michael Sorrentino. I haven't seen him in a long time. Say, hey, Mike. No, it does not include the RSS. It does not include the RSS. I think one of the prizes that it has in there is a lot of EM equipment, a lot of extreme EM tools that Intrepid didn't have at the time, and most all of the Northeast work, if not all of the Northeast work, is that right, Hollywood? Is EM. So that's a nice addition to our portfolio for certain.
Excellent. And then we got another one since somebody asked if you're hired. Y'all can just ignore that for right now, because I think that's the question that everybody else is going to get. So let me ask you this: as far as going,
we just hired 106 people. So,
another thing is, as far as the forward looking in the industry, what would be y'all's prediction? How many more of these acquisitions and potentially mergers do you guys think we're going to see over the next, let's say, 6 to 12 months? Either, that you guys can include your number, what you guys might be involved in, or what you see in some of the other companies out there.
I think the time is ripe to have consolidation. I think there's going to be mergers. I think there are going to be acquisitions. The access to capital is a hurdle today. Everybody is pretty shy about deploying capital into the oilfield services market when you're looking at the price of oil where it is, the rigs dropping like they are. And look, I said earlier, I'm an optimist. I realize we've got X amount of rigs today, and in 30 days, it might be X divided by 2. We're not certain. We're going to manage ourselves to the point where we can be profitable and successful, and then we'll grow it back up if it goes in that direction. But we're looking the other direction. We've actually picked up some incremental work in the recent weeks. So we're enthused, and I remain optimistic, as I've said.
So what has been the response from some of your clients? Because obviously you have a whole new breadth of clients that are now going to be working with Intrepid. What was some of the responses that you guys got from your clients? I'll
go real briefly and then head to Hollywood. But we went with all we had Zoom. Look, a challenge to this has been Zoom and telephones. And in a perfect world, Hollywood and I would have been in Houston, and we would see people and shake hands and sit down one-on-one and really see each other and feel enthusiasm and confidence. And we haven't been able to do that yet, and that's been very disappointing. So we've spent a lot of time on Zoom. And we did that with all of their customers, all of our new customers now. And I think the response was spectacular, honestly. This is a good thing for everybody involved. And I think the fact that we brought the entire operations team over and that nothing, in essence, is going to change, it's going to be seamless, I think everybody was pretty pleased. Hollywood, what would be your reaction?
Yeah, from that was a good 40,000-foot view of it. I think when you look down at some specific examples in the Northeast, we've got a very admirable and diverse 7-inch fleet that can help out with some operations up there in the Northeast. We've got some really good solutions, and I would say ideally, or really realistically, the best slim hull fleet that exists, whether you're looking at any basin. And so we've got a lot of great solutions. We've got some equipment headed to Wyoming for that. Operations out here, we see access to the amount of inventory and assets that Gyrodata has is great for some of our operations that are growing in hull sizes that maybe we are less equipped for. And then again, like Clint said, we have access now to a great MWD or EM MWD platform through Extreme that we now own 100%. We've got the ability to go up for more jobs, and they have an incredible track record running Extreme tools that they've owned up in the Northeast. So, like I said earlier, where we had some shortcomings on some pieces of equipment or some parts of our inventory, our puzzle pieces fit together very nicely for what we're going to supplement each other with for the sake of better performance and better selection and better availability.
So coming through this, once again, kind of a forward-looking thing. How many directional companies do you guys see at the end of the day in being in our industry? Are we still going to maintain this, plus 60 number, or do you guys think that we might come down significantly, or even potentially go up with reduced asset costs as potential bankruptcies or people that are just offloading equipment? Where do you guys see that? Where do y'all see the market share as far as the number of players out there?
Yeah, I'll pass that one to Hollywood as well, but I want to preface it with back in November on another project that we're working on that, quite frankly, would probably be a topic for another show. 88 directional drilling companies providing services in the U.S. land market. Not 60, but 88.
Yeah, and I think in regards to that question, David, I would expect that number to approach 50% of what it was at its height. I mean, I think that there's a lot of players out there that may have the cash and the low asset base to just kind of wait this one out until things improve, and then there's others that can't. I would consider there's a good healthy group of 20 plus companies that have been around for a long time, have a lot of assets. They have good, strong balance sheets or not, we don't know. But I really do think that the number is going to drastically reduce, and you're going to see that through consolidation. You're going to see that through people picking it up. I think you're going to see it in a lot of different ways, because the rig count's it's getting hammered all over the country. And specifically in the Permian, where a lot of us have leveraged our work over the years.
So we are getting some questions coming in. One of the people says, because obviously we have a very international audience here, so not everybody's familiar with how we do things here in U.S. land. So one of the questions is how are directional drilling contracts structured? So you guys could do a little education there. And then the next couple of questions were, what are you guys' thoughts on remote drilling operations and the number of DDs and MWDs in the future? So I'll let you guys.
Yeah. So in regards to how the contracts, quote unquote, work, sometimes we go through these massive RFQs, and it's usually around performance pricing. So they seem to be buttoned up a little bit more. Liabilities and exchanges of money seem to be laid out very, very diligently. But about 90% of the time, you are submitting a bid that does have your terms and conditions on it, but you're under the management of the MSA that you agreed to with the operator that you're doing business with, and so with that, there's a lot of it goes back to the expectations, right? Their MSAs are very strict. The MSAs are very much in favor of the operators, but that's because of the expectations that are attached to doing the work. And when we do get quote unquote contracts, it's usually because it's tied to some level of performance, and those need to be buttoned up a little bit more. But I would say majority of the work that's done in onshore is a bid with a price list and operating under the MSA that's done with the operator.
And look, we're all going for that prize of the quote follow me rig, but in reality, our work is guaranteed for what you just finished. You could be let go at any given time, so there's no real solid expectations other than good performance to maintain your work.
Yeah, and I'll say that for a lot of the international audience, you guys that are watching, so some of you guys are probably more familiar with the tendering process, especially if you're working for a national oil company, where it's like a 2 to 3 year thing. You do all of the bid work, you do everything ahead of time, saying this is the stuff that we're going to provide, this is how we do it, this is what our pricing is going to be, and essentially once you're on that rig, you're on that rig for 2 to 3 years. You have to significantly mess up to be able to get kicked off and have somebody else brought out. U.S. land is a little bit different. You could be kicked off midway through the well just because of whatever. So it's a little bit different. So that also decreases the barrier to entry, which is what some of the stuff that we've already talked about. So just a little bit of information. So back to the question, as far as what are you guys looking at and what are you guys planning for as far as remote operations here in the future?
Yeah, I think that that's a topic that's becoming more and more popular. We do have some current customers that are interested in exploring it, some current customers that are currently utilizing it. It seems like, I do think in remote ops, there probably needs to be a little bit more uniform expectations, because it does seem like, and we're more than happy to accommodate and figure it out. I mean, we're in the service business at the end of the day, but it does seem like every customer does have their own way that you want to do it. And in order to actually make this efficient, make this better, there needs to be a standardization of the expectations and what remote ops means. Because if I have remote ops on one rig, the cost for remote ops is actually more than any of the savings could ever be, right? And so you need to have the scale of remote ops in order so the operator can effectively reduce reliability on location, continue to have the same amount of performance, and also, share in some cost savings efforts that are seen because of the scale of the remote ops. Without the scale, remote ops is just simply kind of trying to figure it out. We struggle because of all the different wants and needs of different operators. Like I said, we're more than happy to figure it out with them. But it's become, as it has become popular, it's become very apparent that there's a lot of different wants and everyone has a different vision of remote ops, specifically in the Permian where it hasn't necessarily been a prolific service out there. Everyone sees it progressing in a different way. And so we're navigating those channels continuously.
Well, thank you guys. I've got one more question in here. The comment section has slowed down just a little bit here, but we've got a question. Where do you see the performance advances coming from in the future for directional drilling? I think it's an excellent question. Thank you so much, Butch Belcher he's a sales manager at PV Fluid and Products. So ask a good question and you get a plug on the show.
Yeah, so I think that we've seen a massive surge of great technology coming out in the past 3 to 4 years. And I think as we understand that, I think we're just going to continue to get better and better in terms of application-specific equipment. The Permian is diverse. Just for one example, right? It's massive. It has all different horizons. It's got 2 basins in it, and all of those come with their own challenges and needs and wants for different equipment. I will say that ever since the high torque kind of application came out, where 7-inch were being run 8-inch, whether it's 5 1/4, 5 1/2, or the proprietary 5 3/4 that we have. It seems like the bit technology has improved immensely as well. And so our motor fleet's improved and then bits were lagging. And it seems like bits are now improving to the point where we're about even, right? And so the next step is who's going to improve their stuff more? Are the bits going to take one more big jump, or are the directional company going to take one more big jump? But we'll say that a lot of it comes down to good R&M, good QA/QC, good inspection practices, and investing the money back into your equipment when you need to. We have to run a business at the end of the day, but the most important thing is making sure that we don't have those incidents that get in the way of us continuing operations with our customers.
I think one of the focus that our customer base has is artificial intelligence, this auto slide, this ability to make some of these decisions computer aided, maybe with less human interaction. And we've seen this work with some success, limited success, probably not as much as we want to see yet, but we're exploring some of those opportunities as well. And I do see that taking a fast path. And by that, I could mean 3 to 5 years, but we're heading in that direction.
Clint, I'm glad you brought that up. So that brings so one of the questions we added on here from Drew Wood, great MWD guy. He calls himself a code ninja because he's started to transition from doing MWD work to coding. So congrats to you, Drew. Saw that earlier. And he was asking about what are your thoughts on doing data analytics? And this is kind of I want to fold in my question here too, because obviously with all the assets that you guys have purchased and the history, because that's also part of what you guys have purchased is what GyroData has done. How are you guys tackling that as far as being able to merge, potentially your 2 databases together in a sense, to be able to even leverage what both groups have learned in the past and to be able to go forward and essentially create a even larger set of data to be able to make decisions off of?
Yeah, I think that that's a monumental task in itself. And as we progress on day 4 of this acquisition, that's one of the things to tackle, right? That's one of the things to evaluate. Our goal is to get everyone together when the country opens up, check all the egos at the door, and really figure out what's going to make us more successful. Whose side of the equipment is best and better and can be improved. We're going to take advantage of knowing what they know, and they're going to take advantage of knowing what we know, because now we're one company, right? It's ours, and it's ours to improve, and it's ours to develop, and it's ours to push the limit on as well. But data analytics, that's always somewhere where I think our industry, it has a lot of good tools and it can use a lot of improvement as well. I think personally on our end, we're transitioning away from a lot of the classic directional drilling softwares because they're just antiquated and they're limited. And we're pushing out new software And it's strictly for tracking. It's simply for understanding our data better, giving us the tools that we need so that we're not going through so many manual processes like we've always had to go through.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. I know I don't want to take up too much. We've already over 30 minutes here. I'll give you guys any last words that you guys want to be able to share with everybody out there watching.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having us on board, David. We appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you again. And look, it's a tough time. It's a challenging time. But as I've said many times today, and I think Hollywood will concede, but we're optimistic. It's not all doom and gloom. There are good things that can happen even in these challenging times. And I think this acquisition of Gyro Data and the combining of our cultures and our talents and our abilities and our assets and this is spectacular stuff. And we're excited about it. And I can sense the Gyro Data people are as well. So one intrepid, go forward. And as Hollywood just said, we're on day 4, and it's been a pretty exhausting 4 days. As considering that most all of it's been done just like this on Zoom and not seeing anybody face to face. So I'm getting a little bit. I remember you used to all say, "Boy, wouldn't it be nice if we could work from home?" Okay, had enough of that. It's time to get back to it. So, Hollywood, how about you?
Yeah, I think we're all excited for the challenge. We've got a lot of things on our to-do list and our checklist to get through here in the next 60, 90 days, and then start forming some larger plans that are, 6 months, 18 months down the horizon. Right now we're focused on continuing performance, making sure operations aren't interrupted, and continuing to serve everyone, at or higher than their expectation, and being successful that way.
Well, thank you guys so much for your time. I do appreciate it. Everybody out there watching, thank you guys for tuning in. This has been, this is my first time doing 2 shows back to back. It went fairly seamlessly today, so I'm pretty proud of that. I really look forward to being able to see more optimism in the directional drilling space, directional drilling and MWD space, and for that matter, what we can be able to do in geothermal with what Jamie said earlier today. If you guys didn't watch that, go back and watch it. There's a competition coming up where you can get $50,000 for just submitting your idea, right? And then it progresses in further and further. So Clint and Hollywood, thank you guys so much for being here to be able to talk about this deal. It is I know I've still got like a million more questions, but I'll follow up with you guys later. I know that y'all, like you said, you're only on day 4 of this. Right. So you guys got to, I can only imagine the amount of workload that you guys have got and things to be able to finish up, as well as continuing to run day-to-day operations. I don't envy that position. I would much rather just talk live on LinkedIn a whole bunch than have to do all of that. So with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. We do appreciate it. Please be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe. And this is brought to you by Gibson Reports, because I never plug my own business when I do this, so I need to start remembering that. Thank you guys for watching. As always, know your industry.
Thank you.